Hello there, welcome matrix to educate. Let us do fluvial landforms in geomorphology grade 12. So basically, fluvial landforms, there are several, but in this video I'm only going to do 3 of them and maybe 3 in another video. So now we have got a couple of landforms which are just things that form from the land when water is flowing. So let's start with this one. This is a flat plane. So a flat plane is a flat area, and then this area, it surrounds the river. Okay, it's a wide flat area that surrounds the river, and most of all, this area is flooded by the river. So this simply means that the area is actually flooded by the river. Just means that the river floods around that area. So in actual sense, when we're talking about the flat plain, we are just talking about all of this area that is surrounding the river, all of this surrounding area around the river. This is known as a flat plain. So this whole big place, it's a wide place. You can hear it's wide, it is flat. Okay. Okay, it is wide, it is flat, meaning that it doesn't have a steep gradient. So that is known as a flat plain. The flat plain is found in the lower course, because remember that at the lower course of a river, we have got a gentle gradient. Okay, of course, this cannot happen at the upper course, because the upper course is more like a mountainous area where there is a steeper gradient. So the flat plain is that area that we find at the lower course. All right. So basically, the flat plane here, even in the other image, we can see the flat plane as this area, all of this area that is around the river. As long as it's a flat area, it's a wide area, it's a big area, and then it is flooded by the river. Simply meaning that when the river floods, it will just pour out its waters around that area. That is a flat plain. So now, there are importances of flat plains. Number one, the soil on the flat plains is fertile. So it contains fertile soils, and then those fertile soil can be used for crop farming. So basically, a river has got a flat plain that contains fertile soil. When you say that the soil is fertile, remember it simply has nutrients, okay, so that it can be able to grow crops on it. So whenever you bring crops or whatever that you want to plant there, you can actually use that soil, because the soil is fertile. The soil is able to grow crops. So it is good for crop farming because it is fertile. Now, the area is flat. The area is flat, or we can say that the area is a gentle. Okay, there's a gentle gradient, of course. So the area is flat, it has a gentle gradient. So now, since the area is leveled up, or it is flat in this way, we can actually construct settlements. So basically, it's easier for us to construct settlements on the flat plain, because some of the people actually stay next to rivers, because that's very possible. You can see buildings around the rivers. You can see other people when they wake up, they look at this beautiful view of a river, just like me, because I stay in the rich neighborhoods and whatnot. So basically, when you are staying around here, you are actually settling in the area. So you can build settlements in the flat plain, because it is flat, it has got a gentle gradient. Okay, so now the floodplains also can create habitats for different animals, such as the fish. So basically, remember that there are certain animals that stay in the soil, of course. So since the soil on the floodplain, it is wet, it can be actually a habitat for such animals, some animals. Okay, even other fish, they can also be harbored by the what? By the floodplain. So that area that is surrounding the river, it can create habitats for a variety of animals. So we can say that it actually increases the biodiversity. When they say increases the biodiversity, it still means the same idea as giving habitats for animals. Okay. And then there's also easy access to water for a variety of uses, of course. So basically, the floodplain has got easy access to water. First of all, it's because it's an area that is around a river. So when you are at the floodplain, or at this area surrounding a river, you are near the river, of course. So you can be able to do what? You can be able to fetch water there for a variety of uses. It can be either for irrigation or whatever agricultural purposes, or industrial purposes, or whatever needs that you need to use water for. Okay, so there's easy access to water for a variety of uses. So when they ask floodplains, they sometimes not directly ask you to explain floodplains, but they can ask about a river in general, but you can reply to them with the advantages or the importances of a floodplain. It still gives the same sense. But when it comes to the next landform, which is a meander, the meander, when they ask it, they make sure that they tell you, because there are a couple of things that you need to know about a meander. So a meander is basically when the river is bending. So it is a bend in the river. So when the river is winding and bending. So whenever you see the word winding and then you see the word bending, we are talking about meanders. We say that the river is meandering. So they can say it's a meandering stream or something like that. Just means that the river, it is winding, it is bending. So literally, you can say that the river here, it looks like a snake because it has got bends. In this image, you can see that the river looks like a snake. It is bending in the way. So those bends are known as meander loops. So meander loops are just what? They are just bends and winds of a river. So a meander loop looks like this from the top. So this is more like a plan view. So this is the plan or the top view of a meander loop. So you can see that here you have got a river, and then the river is flowing. Let's just see. The river is flowing in this direction, and then it bends here. You can see that it's not flowing straight. It bends at this position. It bends, it bends, it bends, it bends. So this bend here on the river's course, it is known as the meander loop. So the meander loop has got things that you need to be specific about and to know them. So it has got two parts or two sides. It has got a slip of slope as well as an undercut slope. So it has got a slip of slope as well as an undercut slope. So now, which one is which? The slip of slope of a meander loop, it is the slope that is inside in the inner bank. So the inner parts of this meander loop, it is the slip of slope. So the inner part of the meander loop, if I can just redraw the meander as something like this, the inner part or the inner slope of the meander loop, it is known as a slip of slope. And then the outer part of the meander loop or the outer bend of the meander loop, they can say outer bend or they can say outer bank. It's still the same thing. So the outer bank, it is known as an undercut slope. It's known as an undercut slope. So there are two slopes that make up a meander, with a slip of slope as well as an undercut slope. So now we can also view this from the side as well, so that we can be able to identify those slopes. So viewing this from the side, this is how it looks like. So the slip of slope, it is this one. This is the slip of slope. All of this area, it is the slip of slope. So this is found in the inner bank or the inner bend of the meander, the inner part of the meander, the slip of slopes. So this is a diagram from it's more like a transverse profile, yeah, or it's a cross section. Yeah, we can say it's a transverse profile or it's a cross section. So this is more like a cross section or a cross profile of a meander. This is cross profile of a meander. That's how a meander looks like when you are making its cross profile. And then this other slope on this other side, it is known as an undercut slope. So this is the undercut slope. So you must be able to identify it even using this other diagram, because it's not the same as them, the top view and the plan view as well. So we need to know the characteristics of each and every slope there. We have an undercut slope, we have a slip of slope, of course. They've got just opposite characteristics, of course. So now, the undercut slope, it is concave. So it's a concave slope. And then the slip of slope, it is a convex slope. So slip off, it is convex, and then undercut, it is concave. So you can just say the one is the opposite of the other. And then now at the undercut slope, there's a lot of erosion, or that erosion is known as undercutting, basically. So at the undercut slope, there's a lot of erosion, or there's a lot of undercutting. So it means that here at the undercut slope, the materials, the sand or the sediments and everything that is making up this area, it is eroded away. Basically, the slope is eroded away because there is erosion that is occurring. We say the erosion is known as undercutting because it is cutting from it is actually cutting from under, okay, from beneath. Yeah, you can say that it is cutting from beneath of the river. So basically this is undercutting that's going on. So it actually scoops out the soil and the sediments. It actually erodes them out. It erodes them out and erodes them out from the surface. And then now the other thing that happens with the undercut slope, the area is deep. So basically the undercut slope is a deep area because when you stand here, when you just stand here, basically you're gonna fall here and you're gonna fall so deep. But if you're going to stand here at the slip of slope, you can see that it's a shallow area. Okay, so the area is shallow. The slip of slope, it is a shallow area when you stand on it, but the undercut slope, it is a deep area. It is a deep area. Yes, so it's a deep slope or it's a deep area. And then the other thing that we need to note also, the undercut slope. At the undercut slope, the river moves faster. So basically, the river there, it moves faster. So this means that the river is moving faster. It is being violent. It has got a lot of energy. That is why there's a lot of erosion and a lot of undercutting at the undercut slope. That's where the name undercut come from. It's because there's a lot of undercutting by the river's movement. So the river is moving faster. The river is moving faster. But at the slip of slope, the river is moving slowly. So river here, it moves slowly. So basically, seeing these two things, we can say that at the slip of slope, there is deposition. There is deposition. So it means that at the undercut slope, when there is material that has been eroded from the undercut slope, it will be deposited at the slip of slope. So material that has been undercut or material that has been eroded, that has been removed from the surface at the undercut slope, it will be deposited at the slip of slope. Because at the slip of slope, there's a lot of deposition. At the undercut slope, there's a lot of erosion. So those eroded materials at the undercut slope, they will be deposited at the slip of slope. Okay, I hope that clear. And then now, basically when that happens, how would that look like? The undercut slope will move in that direction. So the undercut slope will probably be somewhere here. It will now be here. Why has the undercut slope been shifted here? Because here you can see that according to my diagram here, I have shifted the undercut slope. So now the undercut slope here has shifted because basically here there has been erosion. Okay, the undercut slope was somewhere here, remember? But because here I've eroded, there's been undercutting. So basically the eroded materials, they have been removed them. And then those eroded materials will be dumped or they will be just deposited here. They will be just deposited here at the slip of slope because the river at this point is moving slowly at the slip of slope. So basically the eroded material will be deposited here. So here we have it. So basically this is what happens. There is undercutting here. The main process or the major process happening at the undercut slope is undercutting, or you can say it is erosion, because undercutting is just basically erosion. All right, it's just that it is happening beneath the surface of the earth. So now that you know that, you can now look at the meander developing into something else that is known as an oxbow lake. So basically, a meander can change and develop into an oxbow lake. So an oxbow lake, this is how it looks like in reality. This is an oxbow lake in reality. So now oxbow lakes, please listen to this very carefully. So this is how a meander loop looks like. So this is the meander loop. We've already discussed it to say that here the river, it is flowing and then it starts bending, it starts winding, and bending along its course. So it starts winding and bending along its course. So this is image number 1 showing you a meander loop, the one that we just did in the previous diagram. I've just reconstructed it so that you can see it again. It's a meander loop. But now, when you look at diagram number 2, because this is diagram number 1 for us, this is diagram number 2. Do you realize that diagram number 2 here, it is still a meander, but the meander is now a bit different. The meander, it is now more tighter. Okay, the meander, it is now more tighter, or it is closer. Its ends are closer to one another. How can we see that? Of course, here, remember, this is the water and it is flowing, and then this is the water bending. This is the meander, the bending, and the winding. Okay, and then here we go. So basically, if you see here, look at the space here between these two parts of a river in a meander, and look at the space here. What is the difference? Here there is less space in image number 2. Okay, watch that carefully. There is less space here in image number 2. It's because now the meander has now narrowed. The meander is now a narrow. It's now narrows. Okay, it now becomes tighter. Okay, so you can say that it becomes tighter or it is narrowed. So now you'll be asking yourself, what is actually causing this? But before we get to how does this even happen in the first place, we can look at situation number 3 or image number 3. So when you look at image number 3, the meander here, okay, the meander now is no longer part of the river. How do we see that? Now, this is the river. It is moving. It is flowing, of course. This is the water in the river. It is flowing. But now, it is no longer flowing towards that meander. It is no longer bending. It is now just moving straight, ignoring that part of the meander. So this part will have water indeed, but then this part is, the water is no longer flowing here continuously. So this is another small part that remains. So basically, this small part that has been cut off from a meander, it is known as an oxbow lake. So an oxbow lake, it was a meander, it was just a bend of a river, but that bend became tighter and tighter and tighter, such that the water ended up not moving towards the bend. Okay, the water ended up just moving straight and flowing in this direction, ignoring going around the bend. Remember, in the other images, the water was moving and then it was flowing around the bend, around the meander loop, around this bend. But here at situation number 3, it is now ignoring this bend. So this bend here, this cut off, this thing that has been cut off here, it is known as an oxbow lake. So we have got an oxbow lake. So in reality, this is how an oxbow lake looks like. So an oxbow lake, it looks like this in reality. You can see, I'm sure you can note down that this is a river here. This is a river, probably is flowing in this direction. Here is a river, here is a river, is a river, whatever name it is. And then when you see, there is another section of the river that has been cut off from the river. If you can look carefully, we have another section here. We have another section here that I am highlighting right now. This section here, it has been cut off. It has water indeed, but then it has been cut off from the main river. So that meander that has been cut off, it is known as an oxbow lake. It's a lake because the water is no longer flowing anymore. It's just water that is standing, because a lake has got water that is not flowing to other places. It is just water contained within that space. So here, the water here is contained in this small space, and then this is known as an oxbow lake. Now you need to be able to explain all that using words. What actually causes the meander loop to tighten and eventually cut off the oxbow lake? First thing that happens there is continuous undercutting at the outer bank. I have already described to you that the outer bank of a meander loop, we are talking about this side, which is known as an undercut slope. So the undercut slope, it is basically the outer bank. It is the outer bank. So remember, we've said that at the outer and at the outer bank, at the undercut slope, what is the fluvial process that dominates them? It is erosion. So basically, erosion is the fluvial process that will dominate. So there will be continuous undercutting. And we've said that particularly the name of the erosion is undercutting. So there is continuous undercutting, or there's continuous erosion at the outer bank of the meander loop. And then there's also continuous deposition at the inner bank, because here inside within the meander, remember we said that when materials are being eroded from the ground at the undercut slope, they will be deposited at the slip of slope or in the inner bank. So the slip of slope, it is found in the inner bank. So at the inner bank, there will be a lot of deposition. Just means that the eroded material that has been eroded there at the outer bank, it is now being deposited in the inner bank of the meander loop. So there is continuous deposition in the inner bank. And then when that happens, this will actually cause the meander loop to become tighter. Now, this is an explanation to say that the continuous processes, these fluvial processes of erosion at the outer bank and deposition in the inner bank, actually cause this meander loop to become tighter. It causes this meander neck to narrow. Okay, because here you can see that here it was wide, or the band was not so narrowed. Okay, it's more like it was open there in the first diagram, but now it's a bit closed. All right, so now it is now a bit tighter. Yeah, so basically when they say it's now a bit tighter in this way, they can use the word entrenched. It is now more entrenched. So when we say that we've got entrenched meander, or we've got an incised meander, it just means that it has got a neck that is narrowed. The neck has become narrow. It was open like this, just like here you can see that it was open. This blue area, this area that I've shaded was open, but now it is a bit more tighter. Okay, so the meander neck will narrow. And then when this happens, when the loop is now tighter, the ends actually become very closer to one another. That is quite observable. You can see that the ends here, you can see that the ends of the river here, these ends, and these ends of this band, they're now a bit more closer to one another because of this tightness. So the ends are closer to one another. So now, here's an important point that you need to get. The next one. During heavy rainfall and flooding. Guys, write this exactly as I wrote it here, especially this point that I'm on right now. During heavy rainfall and flooding. Only during heavy rainfall and flooding. Remember, during rainfall, heavy rainfall and flooding, there's a lot of water that is coming from the clouds, and then of course it fills up the rivers. It actually increases the energy of the river. It actually increases the energy of the river, of course. So basically, what will happen? The river, since it has got more energy, it won't take its time to go around this around this meander neck anymore. It won't flow around this bend anymore, but it will just cut through the ends. It will just cut through, the water will just cut through, and it will just flow just in a straight path because of this heavy rainfall and flooding. And then when the water is now just flowing through this straight path in this way, it is no longer going around in the meander loop. Then now you can now bring the oxbow leg and say that this part has been cut off. So that cut off lake, that lake that has been cut off, that lake that has been cut off from the mainstream is known as an oxbow lake. It's a lake that has been cut off from the mainstream. It's known as an oxbow lake. So the oxbow lake is just basically that stream that is alone. It came from the river. Originally it was a meander, but because of this tightening, okay, because of this tightening, and then during heavy rainfall and flooding, the river actually cut it off from the mainstream such that it remained as an oxbow lake. So these oxbow lakes are very significant to us. We can use them as human beings to do quite a couple of activities. such as which activities can we look at? So basically, oxbow lakes, they also form habitats for wildlife. So they actually increase the biodiversity because, of course, the fish can stay there and all of those can live, ecosystems, food chains, and whatnot. It is in the same context. It describes that animals or species can be able to be inside an oxbow lake because it's actually a habitat. It's a place that can harbor animals, okay, and wildlife, of course. And then the oxbow lakes can also be used as a water source for agricultural purposes. And not only for agricultural purposes, you can use the water from an oxbow lake to do many things, industrial activities, and all of those other things that require us to use water. So basically, oxbow lakes, remember that they've got water in them. Remember that the oxbow lakes took water from the river. Initially, it was a river basically. So when it is now cut off like this, that remaining water can be used or it can be fetched, it can be accessed so that it can be used for industrial and agricultural purposes. They also serve as tourist attractions because they are beautiful, they're aesthetically pleasing. So many people can visit so that they can just take pictures of oxbow lakes. And of course, there is an economic advantage. It can increase the gross domestic product of the country. Now, we have got another minor landform known as a meander scar. The meander scar comes from the oxbow lake. So basically, the oxbow lake, since we have said that it has got the remaining water that it had when the river was still running through it, but now it is now cut off. Remember, it is now cut off from the mainstream, so it doesn't have a reliable supply of water. So if it happens that there is no longer rainfall or there is a decrease in the average rainfall over time, this will cause that oxbow lake to dry out, okay, because the water that is in there, it was coming from the river when it was a meander scar, but now because it has been cut off from the mainstream, the water that is flowing in the river won't be able to reach it in any way anymore. So basically, this will dry out the oxbow lake. So the dry oxbow lake is known as a meander scar. So a meander scar is a dry oxbow lake. So it's a dry oxbow lake. It's an oxbow lake, but it is dry, of course, because it doesn't have water anymore because there's been a decrease in the average rainfall over time. So it looks like this. Actually, you can look here very, very, very carefully. Observe here we have got White River here. This is a label written White River, and here you've got a meander scar. It is just now a hole that is open. It is now just a valley that is dry without water in it. So this is known as a meander scar. It's labeled here meander scars. So meander scars are just now holes that there were oxbow lakes when they had water after being cut off, but now they are just known as meander scars. Okay, so in most of your diagrams, when they draw it, they'll just draw a mainstream like this, and then they will show you this thing that has been cut off. If it is filled with water, then it's an oxbow lake. But then when it doesn't have water, when it's a dry oxbow lake, it is a meander scar. But now you ask yourself, how can an oxbow lake maintain its water? I mean, let's just assume that it's not drying out, it has got water. How does it maintain its water? How do we keep on having water in this oxbow lake even though the main river or the main stream, it is no longer flowing towards it? So now the water in an oxbow lake is maintained in three ways. So first of all, it is heavy rainfall that causes flooding. So when there's a lot of heavy rainfall, basically, that heavy rainfall will be able to fill up, okay? It will be able to flood and fill up the what? The oxbow lake, because we want water to be in the oxbow lake so the rainfall can bring them water. And then also when the mainstream floods out, let's just assume that river rejuvenation has taken place and then the mainstream is flooding. So some of the water of the mainstream will just go around and it might fill up the oxbow lake as well. So this is another option, as well as underground water. So basically underground water can also play a role in maintaining the water inside an oxbow lake, because underground water, basically, remember, it comes from that water table, the highest level. So if it happens that the water table is above that riverbed in an oxbow lake, then the oxbow lake will be able to continue getting the supply of water from from the underground. Yeah, from underground. So basically, these are the three ways in which the water in an oxbow lake can be maintained. Thank you so much, Metriculans, for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends to also stay tuned.